Designers, merchants, retailers, when they are building their designs, when they're building their collections, they typically have one or two body shapes in mind. In the case of women's fashion, it tends to be the hourglass and top hourglass body figures from data that we've generated. That's not most of the population. The hourglass body shape is not even a quarter of the population in the United States. And there's a wide swath of the population that has difficulty finding clothes that fit them because clothes just aren't produced for their body shape. My name is Nick Clayton. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Savi.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Lampart, and today how Nick Clayton built and optimized the visual platform driven by analytics tailored for the fashion designer. All this and more on Code Story. Nick Clayton has been into tech most of his life. And outside of tech, he loves a good strategy game or a board game. In fact, he met his fiancé playing these types of games. He's an avid Magic the Gathering player and has been enjoying the game for over 20 years. When I asked the difference between Magic and Dungeons & Dragons, he notes that D&D is a role-playing game and more about telling a story, while Magic is more about strategy and mechanics. He also enjoys spending time with friends and family and cooking a good meal with lots of flavors. Nick and his co-founders followed the data and learned that there were a large number of people in the population that have a hard time finding clothes, because clothes aren't produced in their body shape. After iterating on solutions around education and recommendation engines, they decided to move upstream into the designer's process. This is the creation story of Savi.
Fundamentally, Savi seeks to address the problem of shape in fashion. The issue there is designers, merchants, retailers, when they are building their designs, when they're building their collections, they typically have one or two body shapes in mind. In the case of women's fashion, it tends to be the hourglass and top hourglass body figures from data that we've generated. That's not most of the population. The hourglass body shape is not even a quarter of the population in the United States. And there's a wide swath of the population that has difficulty finding clothes that fit them because clothes just aren't produced for their body shape. So we started out trying to address this issue by creating a recommendation engine. And so we built the first very initial version of our system was a educational app to try to give people advice about how to dress for their body shape. That evolved into this recommendation engine that was suggesting clothes based on a consumer's body shape and proportion. And something that we found there, I initially thought there was something going wrong with our system, that there was a bug in our system. We found for some body shapes that we weren't making any recommendations. Literally, the recommendation page might show up blank at one point in our development process. So I spent a couple of hours hunting around for the bug. Couldn't find any bug and eventually figured out that the recommendations were working, there just wasn't anything to recommend. And that in combination with a variety of other thinking on our parts brought us to taking our technology and applying it upstream to the actual design process, which is where we are today. So we have a system that helps retailers, designers, and merchants better optimize their collections to flatter their actual customer population.
Tell me about the MVP for that product. The first product you built. How long did it take you to build, and what sort of tools did you use to bring it to life?
We formed the company in early 2016. The first real product that we brought to market, I would say we didn't really start working on until late 2016. Our first MVP with that product was late 2017. So it was about a year for us to build the whole recommendation engine. We used a lot of custom implementation, right? A lot of the AI and ML was based on a patent that we filed and based on our own systems built on the sort of standard SQL, Python. One of the core aspects of our technology has been that it has always been visual, and we more and more are viewing ourselves as a computer vision company, in addition to being a AI ML for fashion. And so for that, we used primarily TensorFlow, a little bit of Keras, a fair bit of OpenCV as the really all three of those are excellent resources for anyone looking to get into computer vision generally.
Let's dig into that a little more. So even in choosing those technologies or, what you were going to start building first, you got to go through with any MVP, you got to make certain decisions and trade-offs about, what you're going to build, when, what you're not going to build, what sort of technical debt you're going to accept. So tell me about some of those decisions and trade-offs you had to work through and how you coped with them.
Yeah, we had a really pretty hefty question early on for whether or not we wanted to build out our visual recognition pipeline in-house. We spent a while making that decision, testing out some of the systems that existed out there. The primary one we were looking at was the IBM Watson system. We found that for our application, we were looking at such specific details. We weren't really looking to classify, a chair versus a car versus a person. We were looking to classify a V neckline versus a deep V neckline versus a round neckline, which is a much more nuanced classification and requires more domain-specific customizations that just aren't available through a system like that. So we did eventually, we did a bunch of testing on accuracy, and we built some preliminary prototype systems off of the TensorFlow library, and we found that we were able to get slightly higher accuracy even with those preliminary prototypes. So we went forward with that, building out our own pipeline and being able to leverage the domain expertise in the way that we constructed that pipeline. I'm not a fashion designer. Two of my co-founders are fashion designers, and it was really helpful in building out our first version of that system. And it's been helpful throughout the process to understand exactly what's going on from a fashion perspective so that we can build that into the algorithms rather than just sort of blindly applying data.
That makes sense. I would imagine you have to build a lot of custom stuff to solve what you're solving, given that you're innovating quite a bit in this specific area because nothing exists like what you're building, right?
Yeah, it is a very new area. And to give you an idea, we have filed 5 patents over the years. We're considering filing a 6th now. But there's a lot of domain specificity and a lot of innovation that has to happen to get the level of quality that we're looking for beyond sort of, a standard application of a standard network architecture. That's a great place to start. That's exactly where we started. For our visual recognition system, the first implementation was, we had tested 2 or 3 network architectures, Inception being one of them, ResNet being another one of them, and we threw some data at those architectures and to see how it works, right? Get the first fastest thing that we could get up and running, a little bit of manual passing of data back and forth to get everything hooked into a system, and get it up and running, see what happens.
Well, how did you progress the product from there, from that point? How did you mature it? And to give a little bit better context of what I'm looking for in that question is, how did you build your roadmap? And how did you decide, okay, this is the next most important thing to build?
So a lot of it was driven by market demand, right? So it was what are customers asking us for, what are our advisors who are in the industry saying is important, what from our experience in, not so much my experience, but my co-founder's experience in the fashion industry. What do they think is important? And then what is doable, right? So that's very much where my expertise came in of these are the things that would be nice to have. And it's always a trade-off of how long is something going to take versus how much value is it going to create for our consumers. And we generally just tried to do the highest value for the least amount of time. Sometimes we would do the absolute highest value, even though it was going to take a long time because it needed to be done. And so the best example of that is when we decided that we really needed to build the analytics and the generative capability to be able to make suggestions in the design phase. And that was a pretty substantial pivot for us. But it was important to solve the actual need that we were seeing, to be able to tell retailers who were asking us, okay, you've seen our collection, you know that we have holes here, here, and here, and we did that analysis manually at first, where we would look at their collection, run it through our visual recognition engine, and see where there were gaps in their assortment. But we didn't have any way to fix that. We could just sort of point to the problem and say, you've got a problem here, you should fix it. And it really became very evident that we needed to be able to fix it. So it's really about where the market was pulling, is probably the biggest driver of roadmap. If the market's not pulling you down your roadmap, you're probably doing something wrong.
So let's talk about the team. So let's switch to team. How did you go about building your team, and what did you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you?
Our team has been, and still is, fairly small. The biggest principle in team, well, there are several principles in team that we've had throughout the years. One of them, we believe firmly in transparency, and that takes a lot of aspects, but it's about, when you think something is wrong, speak up. If you have an idea, speak up. We try to share as much information as we can with the team, so that they know what's going on. And they can bring those useful ideas. The second principle that I feel has been a huge advantage to us is the marriage of design expertise and engineering expertise has always been critical to our success. So insofar as we are able to build a team that's able to work together with that sort of creative side and the analytical side, that's probably the biggest value to us, is that ability among designers to think analytically and among engineers to think creatively. So that and just, we're a startup, it's all hands on deck. We're going to be having people do things that they've never done before. And I'm a firm believer that your ability and willingness to learn is much more important than any experience. Agreed.
I completely agree with that. I also love how you put, teaching designers to think analytically and engineers to think creatively. If you and I could figure out how to make that work, I'm sure we could write a book and help a lot of people to get the left and the right brain firing at the same time.
It's worked out very well for us, for sure. And I don't have a sort of patented system to make that happen. It's about putting everyone in the same room together and getting the right people to see that it does. I wish I had an algorithm to make that happen, but we've found success with it over the years. So it's really just about getting the interested parties together and getting them talking.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted VCSOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. Let's switch to scalability. So did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or are you fighting this as you grow?
It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We tend to err on the side of building things scalably from the start. That's not always feasible. Sometimes we have to make shortcuts to meet. Unless there is a specific deadline, a specific customer ask that we have to meet on some schedule, I will always prefer to build it for the scalable system so we don't have to rebuild it again scalably later. So we've pretty well avoided technical debt over the years, but there's definitely plenty of it in our system. There have been plenty of, this conference is coming up and we need to get the demo out for this. And then after that, there's no more time to work on the demo because it's working already. It's done. That feature functionally works and we'll make it more scalable later. It's really about figuring out where your drivers of cost are and what you have to build scalably. For example, I have, in my personal time, built a calculator for a video game that I play, Pokemon Go. And that is built scalably for absolutely no reason. There's no reason to build it scalably. I just sort of built it scalably by default because it was a short piece of code. But doing that professionally, I would say, just do it. But for our system, we process a lot of images. We did, for example, an analysis of the last 5 years of Fashion Week data, and that's about 100,000 images. We look at images coming down Instagram. We look at images on Pinterest. There's, billions of images there, though we don't process all billions of them, obviously. But so for us, looking at those drivers of cost, like image recognition, and trying to optimize there and bring costs down there, it's about spending your time efficiently, right? And making scalable what needs to be scalable and shortcutting where you can't.
Well, as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of?
There's a few aspects to be proud of, at work in this field for. I think that the probably one of our most technically impressive pieces of software is our image recognition pipeline. And so from a sort of pride as a technologist, I would point to that. And I think that that's at least one of the most impressive things we've built, if not the most impressive thing we've built. From a doing actual good in the world, right? The image recognition does serve a purpose at the end of the day, and it's necessary for all of the other pieces. But I think the analytics and the generative algorithms around allowing designers to build their assortments more sustainably and build their assortments more inclusively, I think that I'm most proud of in that context. So it's maybe less complicated than the image recognition pipeline, but its impact is greater.
Well, let's flip the script a little bit. So tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
In the first cut of our system, we were doing an analysis of a particular retailer for what their assortment coverage was, and where they had holes, and where they had oversupply. We initially ran through their images, and the data just wasn't making any sense. And what we realized was happening was we were duplicating a lot of the images. And part of that was because the way that they were categorized in the hierarchy coming from this retailer was creating duplicates. But it was obvious if you looked at the images or if you analyzed the images at all that they were the same image. Eventually we just had to redo it all and rerun that analysis with dedupe in place there. And we probably should have had dedupe in there from the first place. There are these wildly complicated hierarchies, and we're trying to fundamentally make sense of unstructured data. Not deduping was a huge mistake. At the end of the day, that didn't really cost us anything because we caught it internally. But it's a good example of making sure you're, particularly in data science, making sure that you're running processes correctly.
Deduping, I think, is a technical word that I really like and enjoy. And I think it's a perfect tech word to introduce to the world. So I appreciate that you walked me through that. Well, let's switch to you, Nick. Who influences the way that you work? Name is, CEO, CTO, builder, really any person that you look up to, and why?
I think that there's more than sort of aspirational people out there who have done great works. The Elon Musk's, the Jeff Bezos's. There isn't an individual who I haven't met or who I haven't at least read the works of that I think really influences me. I think most has been the support networks that I've built along the way. So, Ron Lancaster, I met several years ago while we were in the Techstars program in Minneapolis. He's another CTO. He's been enormously helpful to me in navigating the position and figuring out over the years, or just someone to talk over this. What's going on here? What should we do about it? I think that sort of support network is really important, and it's something that I've struggled with over the years, asking for help. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I want to do everything myself. I want to fix everything myself. I don't want to reach out and make other people solve my problems for me, which is not really what asking someone for help is. But it's how I, even 4 or 5 years ago, looked at asking people for help. So I think building that support network and being comfortable reaching out to people, and building those real relationships with people who are experienced in your field is going to be way more useful than any inspiration from some public figure.
Well, we talked about a mistake, Nick, but a little bit different spin. If you go back to the beginning, what would you do differently, or where would you consider taking a different approach?
So, we should have pivoted out of the recommendation space a hell of a lot earlier. I think we carried on in that space for much too long. It's very crowded. There's a lot of approaches to that recommendation space. Ours was unique. Ours was shape-based in a way that no one else was doing, but it was still incredibly difficult to get any attention over the noise of sizing solutions, 250 other companies that are in that recommendation personalization space. Part of that was my fault in being overly attached to what we had built. Realizing that sooner and making the pivot that we did sooner would have made a huge difference for us.
Well, last question, Nick. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur that's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. Can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
One of the pieces of advice that has most stuck with me is really just understand first the problem that you are solving. And it's a fundamental engineering principle, but it's one that we lose sight of far too often in becoming enamored with our technology and becoming enamored with the fancy ways that we can solve a problem that maybe no one is having. So first and foremost, I would say figure out, really even before you figure out your full solution or test anything, figure out what it is that you're trying to solve, and figure out why people need help with that. Why is it that, why is this a problem? Beyond that it is, what are the root causes of that, and where can you most efficiently address that problem? Because, I have a background in computer vision, machine learning. I will tend to hit everything with a computer vision hammer. And that works pretty well for some stuff, but it's overcomplicated for others. I think a really good example of this sort of thinking, I was advising someone a few months ago. They were trying to figure out, they wanted to see how they could apply machine learning to help them filter data in their database. And at the end of the day, we talked through what their problem was, what they were trying to get out of this machine learning system, and they really just didn't need machine learning at all. The whole system could be achieved with some creative use of hashes, and it was a lot simpler. It was a lot faster. It wasn't technologically fancy at the end of the day, but it got the job done. So I think looking for simple solutions to real problems is the best advice that I have.
I love that advice. That's fantastic. Well, Nick, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Savitude.
Thanks so much for having me.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ12 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.